Everyone, and welcome back. Part 3 of the Plebe Summer terminology. I thought I was going to be going through these lists quicker, but with the amount of stories that come up, this has just been so fun. So we're just going to continue the series. We're going along and we're following through with more and more terms from Plebe Summer that you will hear your son or daughter tell you about in stories. If you enjoy this, please like, leave a review, subscribe. It tremendously helps out the channel, so that would mean the world to me. And otherwise, I hope you enjoy this continued conversation between Troy, Ricky, and I. Thank you so much. Go Navy, beat Army. The Academy Insider podcast is sponsored by the Vermeer Group, a residential real estate company that serves the United States Naval Academy community and other select clientele in both California and Texas. If I can ever answer a real estate related question for you or connect you with a trusted Academy affiliated agent in the market which you're in, please reach out to me directly at grant@thevermeergroup.com. You can also reach out to me on my LinkedIn page, Grant Vermeer, and I'd be happy to respond to you there. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the episode. All right, hey everyone, and welcome back to part 3 of the Plebe Summer terminology series, joined again by my guy, Troy, my big dog, Rick, and we're going through and talking about Plebe Summer terminology. This past one had a heavy emphasis on chow calls and everything that's going on. So we're going to jump back into a little bit more terminology and stuff in terms that you just may hear during Plebe Summer. So Rick, I'm going to start us off. The term gray space. When we talk about gray space, what does that recollect for you? Was that a term when you were there? And like, give people a rundown on gray space if you got it.
Honestly, again, this might be just selected memory or traumatized. I do not remember gray space at all, unless there was like some sort of ethical term that like something on the fringe. But that's pure guess and speculation. Never heard it.
See, this is great, and this is why I wanted people on the episode, because gray space is like, that is what Plebe Summer is to us. It is gray space, and I'm solely convinced that this name came about with the development of computers and Excel spreadsheets, right? Because as a plebe, I had no idea. Like, we just heard gray space. Like, oh, what are we doing during gray space? What's all this gray space? Like, I was like, all right, well, that's just the name for it. I assumed it had always been that way until I became the Reg Commander of Plebe Summer. And we have a giant Excel spreadsheet about all of the evolutions in the plan of the day for all plebes, right? Every company, every platoon, a full schedule of what evolutions they have. And in that Excel spreadsheet, if you're going to the O course, it's colored. If you're going to leadership class, it's colored. If you're going to PEP, it's colored. But what happens when you have no planned evolution? That's gray space in the calendar. That's gray space in the calendar. So that, and for us, like, as we're talking about all these terms in the previous episode about all the stuff that's happening in Bancroft Hall, that's happening during gray space, which is quite literally just means you don't have another planned evolution. So the detailers have full control over what they want to do in your training. Right. And so that place is crazy. Troy, do you have any gray space stories that you remember? What was your detailers like go-to thing they would do like during gray space?
So during gray space, the thing that they would give us the opportunity to earn like positive gray space time. Midshipman Ensign Doobie, he was my first squad leader. He would say, you earn good things through winning. If you're a winner, you get to have your space back. So he would either have, he was a voracious reader. He loved, the Roman Empire history there. He also would always make sure that he had talking points from the current events for that day. So if we were able to talk in an educated fashion and sustain a discussion, he'd be like, you know what? Okay, we get to learn something today. If you didn't read those current events, or somebody didn't have the ability to maintain a discussion about, some Civil War or World War II battle or something along those lines, that gray space would get eaten up by being dropped. So I've got a great, not a great memory, but a memory where we had a 45-minute block of gray space, and we just did not, as a collective, we did not prepare, with any of the current events. So we ended up getting burpeed and pushed up to death, 45 minutes straight. And we were just a sweating mess. The bulkheads were being hit, and he would ask questions. Nope, drop. And you were just cycling through that. A good time that we had was, as a platoon leader, I had Lieutenant Junior Grade Petrowski, and he was a former Marine, and he had the exact same, mentality. If you can get my current event question right, we'll have positive gray space. So we got it right. And that's when he taught us how to shine shoes. And he did fire shining, and he also did the other way. And that was one of my favorite moments, because I still use his style of shining shoes to keep my shoes shined to this day. So gray space can be either or.
The gray space, that makes sense. We definitely had that. We did not call it gray space.
Okay.
I think if there was anything that we called it, it was a chance to earn your crap back. The plebe detailers would steal our stuff.
Yeah.
Like the one that they would always go after are the locks. Like
Yep.
Right. Gripping rifles. Oh, locks. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So if you leave that undone, what they did was they would take any lock unlocked or found, they would lock it to another cluster of locks.
Yep.
And it would preclude you from having anything private.
Yep.
And so we had like this ball of like 12 different locks.
The lock bomb.
Anytime there was gray space, they would let you try to earn a chance back. And it was usually like a uniform race or push-ups. And sneak preview, we rarely got the chance to get a shot at the locks, and when we did, nobody ever got it out. So we just lived without locks for like 2 weeks.
You just brought back a core memory.
It's just a core memory, dude. There was
man.
nothing worse than walking out. Again, I don't know like what the worst like gray space memory was, but when you come back on deck, this is a good term. All right, deck. Actually, while we're on it, a deck is just Navy speak for a floor, right? We talk about. You lived on, like I lived on 0 deck, because we start at 0. We start on the 0 deck, which is like the first floor, and then you go up from there. So yeah, when someone says, hey, I live on 3rd deck, or yeah, I'm on 2nd deck, they're just talking about the floor. They're just talking about the floor that they're on in Bancroft Hall. And then the specific building that you're in is the wing you're in. So like during my plebe summer, I was in 6th wing, 3rd deck. But during the academic year, I was living in 8th wing on 0 deck. So again, you hear these terms. Wing is like the specific part of Bancroft that you're in, and then the deck is the floor that you're on. But yeah, I mean, what's crazy, right, is you come back on, you just got done with the O course or the E course, you're doing cool stuff, and for the first time during plebe summer, you're like, that was pretty sweet. Like, I'm in a good mood. Like, that was cool. We did military stuff. And then you walk back up on a deck and you see a detailer back sitting there with the locks and just the blocks in there, or a rifle sitting there because someone didn't lock their rifle.
You're like, all my happiness is gone.
The sinking feeling. The sinking feeling of your old.
And you get asked the question, you get asked the rhetorical question, do you know what happens when insert the blank? And inevitably, the answer is people die. And so if locks are lost, you forget your toothbrush, your socks folded poorly, you have soap scum, people are going to die. Like, attention to detail and the harsh consequences of lack thereof is drilled in your head.
Drilled into you,
Drilled into you. That's so funny, dude.
And as my wife can attest to, I still have troubles with those lessons, but I definitely incrementally learned some attention to detail in my time at the academy.
I love it. Rick, you use the term uniform race. You tell the people what a uniform race is, and then we're going to walk through and talk about all the different uniforms that you could wear during plebe summer. But let's start with what a uniform race is.
So it usually starts with, this is a great gray space activity, earn your stuff back activity, but you would get the plebes to kind of gather up in the hall with the detailer, sometimes in a squad, sometimes in a gaggle, and then they'll just shout out a uniform and give you, a prescribed time to go get in it. So, a minute and a half. I don't ever really think that they even look at the clock. I think that they just wait and look and see that you're close and then just start chanting like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But basically you're supposed to get into the uniform ahead of the time. And, newsflash, nobody makes it. Everybody gets yelled at. And usually if you're lucky enough to be fast and get out first, you get granted the privilege to go front leaning rest and say, we're waiting for our classmates. And then they cycle through that and maybe like sometimes 5, sometimes 15 different uniforms. And the two things that are guaranteed in a uniform race is your closet's going to get completely screwed up because you've got all the stuff that's folded is now thrown everywhere. And the second is you are going to be doused with sweat because you're just stressed and you're wearing heavy clothes. Uniform races to this day, like I hated uniform races.
And the worst part is when you would have the wrong component of a uniform that either you tried to pre-stage a uniform and you didn't change it out or something along those lines. But when you had the wrong part of the uniform, oh man, stand by to stand by. You are
That's the worst part, because then what happens, right, is you do a uniform race where you're sprinting back and forth, you're trying to change, you're hot and sweaty, the Annapolis humidity, you can feel it in Bancroft Hall, so you're just dripping sweat. You go in there, you get back out, you're finally like breathing, you're like on the bulkhead, and they're like, they go and you realize like someone did it wrong, someone's not in the right uniform, and then immediately it's like, oh wait, now get on your face. Rick, what you got?
I have to for my classmates, I have to mention, they would never let me live it down if I didn't mention this. So if anybody from the mighty class of 99
didn't have air conditioning,
this is for you.
So tough.
This is for you. When I talk about sweaty uniform races, one thing that I would mention as a key differentiator of the Naval Academy in the mid-90s as compared to modern day Naval Academy, zero air conditioning. And man, the stones of Bancroft Hall would be like a pizza oven when it would get that. So when you mentioned Annapolis heat and humidity, I was like, oh my God, like Bancroft Hall in August, non-air conditioning was something.
Man.
Yeah. And it's just it's bad. And so you're just dripping sweat. Like everyone's dripping sweat, but you're trying to change between uniforms, right? And I think that's the craziest part, because now you're taking off undershirts, you're putting on a white undershirt, you're taking off, you're putting on a blue undershirt. Well, for us, when we were wearing the blueberries, right? It's going to be a different color now that they're wearing different camouflage uniforms. But same thing, right? So you're going through 17 different shirts in a matter of an hour, right? And you can't put them on because you're all sticky. And so, you know, you're always late, which, much to Troy's point, like, I don't know that like anyone actually counts, or maybe it was Rick's point. No one actually counts. They just like, once they tense you're close, you're like, oh, you got 10. Because here's the thing about summer, which is also another insight, right? Like they cover the clocks. You don't get to know what time it is. Like you don't know what time it is when you're a plebe. Like you can't be like, well, first of all, I'd never encourage you to be like, sir, that wasn't the amount of time. But like, you don't know. Like you don't even know. And so like, you just have to believe them. You just have to trust them. And like, that was
detailer's truth is your truth.
Yeah, straight up, straight up.
You know, we didn't do that. We didn't cover the clocks. That's a new one. I like that. That's pretty crazy. Yeah, we didn't do that.
Yeah, for us, our clocks were covered, and our detailers kept a time bank. So this was like another fun 26 company thing. We kept a time bank. So like, if they gave you a time hack, Rick, like you're saying, you guys have a minute and 30 seconds to do a rack race or a uniform race. You would go do it. And if you came back in a minute 45, what they claimed, you're 15 seconds late, they're like, oh, I'm going to get my 15 seconds back. So they'd go on the chalkboard in Bancroft Hall and they'd add 15 seconds to our time bank. Once that sucker hit an hour, we would just have a beatdown session for an hour. Like that was like oh man, they would take us to the squash courts and they would destroy us for an hour.
Oh, the squash courts.
We're going to get our time back. You guys want to be late? We're gonna get our time back. Don't you worry. We're gonna get our time back. Oh, dude.
They ended up like after our plebe summer, they ended up disallowing going to the squash courts, right? I'm pretty sure.
No, I think you still can. There's just, again, everything has just become more heavily structured. There is quite literally an SOP of how your ITE, an intensive training exercise, goes. Right. So they have the full calisthenic layout of like the format of how it would happen. But you just have to, again, everything's just more regulated now. You just have to route a chit. You still get to beat them down. You just have to route a chit and let people know where you're going and when you're going and how you're going to do it. Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's what
telegraph your torture. Telegraph your torture.
I use this term chit. Hold on. We're going to cover this now. I just used a term called a chit. Yeah. All right. Troy, Rick, whoever wants to cover it here. What's a chit? What's a chit?
In the military, you have a bunch of different forms that you have to fill out. It's just the reality of being in a bureaucratic entity. And so your introduction to that is filling out chits. And a chit is a standardized piece of paper that says, this is what I would like to do. This is when I would like to do it. And this is why. And you have to make sure you route that through your chain of command. Routing means sending it up for approval. And once that's routed up through the chain of command and you get authorization, then you're good to execute. If you don't get approval, then that's when you have to go back to the drawing board and think about what you're doing / what you're asking for. So you've got leave chits, you've got liberty chits, you've got chits for different events, you've got chits for all different sorts of things. So you'll get used to chits.
Yeah. And you also have medical chits. Rick, you mind talking
Oh.
about like what a medical chit is?
Yeah, so if you do get the plebe croup or hack cough, and you have to go to the medic or the corpsman or hospital point, they for those of you sending their kids, there is medical attention. It is professionally staffed by clinically competent people. But as the corpsman or a doctor or nurse sees the mid, they'll give them a chit for any sort of rest if they need to stay in bed or eat a different type of diet. Sometimes you'll see things like no shave chits, where if somebody gets an ingrown hair or sweat, they'll be allowed to like forego a shave until that heals. It's just really just a documentation of, if there's something medically that requires you to heal or do something different, they put it on a piece of paper. So in case anybody asks, you have it.
I like that. That's the most like concise, straightforward definition of a chit. Is like it's just form of documentation of some kind of. It's like it's paperwork. It's documentation of something that's going on. Whether it's a request for approval, whether it's a doctor saying, "Hey, this person needs to do X, Y, or Z." Whatever the case is, that documentation is known as a chit. And so that's CHIT, Charlie Hotel India Tango, a chit. And so that's a big one. Now, in the context of Plebe Summer, there are people who conspicuously always seem to be on chit. So we talk about it like when you're on chit, that means like you have an active chit for something. And a lot of times, again, some people, in my opinion, there's a difference between being hurt and being injured. Not everyone feels that way. Not everyone processes it the same way. And so there are a lot of people who just happen to chronically be on chit. And so, such was born the term chit surfer. So do you mind, Rick, you give it a laugh, you mind give it a rundown of this term chit surfer and kind of, what the connotation means as relation to if you are a chit surfer?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think from a Naval Academy perspective, you often hear pain is weakness leaving the body. And so there's definitely a culture of toughing it out. But for those that find themselves with a chit that's limiting some sort of physical activity, usually running, I know shin splints tended to be the chit du jour.
Yeah.
And some people really do genuinely get shin splints and genuinely need to heal them. And for those of you that have experienced that, I don't mean to belittle that injury, but there are some mids that over the years that take advantage of those situations and maybe stretch a chit to get an extra day off from running, maybe get a little extra sleep, get a little extra food. You ride that chit and surf it to some little extra privilege. Usually not running and sleeping, but anything taking advantage of a chit wise. And I'm not knocking it. I think people do use it strategically, but yes, there are people that take advantage of that.
So an interesting point with that, right, is again, much to Rick's thing, as much as we joke and we're having fun with this, if you're injured or you are sick, like like you need to get taken care of. Right? Like you need to get taken care of. And being on chit is not being on chit is not inherently a bad thing, right? That's not like, oh man, I'm actually injured, so I go on chit. Like people are gonna see me bad. Like that's not even sort of the case, right? And I want to be very clear about that. It just is some people, like Rick said, take advantage of it because the only thing that can stop a detailer is the pen of a doctor. The pen of a doctor can get you out of anything, dude. And so if that doctor says, oh, no, this person's sick, they need to be SIQ, sick in quarters. You're going to hear this term SIQ, sick in quarters. It means you get to stay in your room. So if there's a piece of paper on the front of that door that the doctor says this person is sick, they need to sleep, guess what? That detailer doesn't get to go in there and wake them up and bring them out to pep in the morning. That plebe just needs to sleep. That plebe just needs to sleep.
Plebes are going to be like eating dirt and licking the floor and getting all sorts of sickness so they get SIQ and get an extra day's sleep.
And so there were some people, again, there are people who literally get injured. Of course, this term chit surfer is, again, generally like, let's say you're kind of milking something going on and you're getting out of all the physical, you're getting out of all the physically difficult aspects of Plebe Summer. You're getting out of everything. Yeah. That's where this term chit surfer comes along because they're kind of surfing their way through Plebe Summer by staying on chit. by staying on chit. So
Yeah.
that's where this term chit surfer has come about. Obviously, again, I want to be very clear as we have lighthearted conversations. If you are genuinely injured and genuinely sick, like, you need to go see the doctor and get taken care of, like, point blank, period. And there's no negative stigma associated with that in the slightest. This is just lighthearted conversation about some friends and peers that we have witnessed who have definitely taken advantage of the system to have a nice day, at least during Plebe Summer.
A nice week.
Oh, man. All right. But someone who wouldn't be SIQ or go on chit is someone who's extra motivated. You want to use, when we use the term motivated in the military, someone who's just really motivated, a Joe. What are we talking about? What are we talking about?
Motivate me.
Motivate me, baby. I mean, motivate me.
That's that. Like, you're bringing the energy. You are bringing the energy. You are somebody who, you know, is ripe and ready to get going in the morning. You're ripe and ready to get in pep. You know, you're trying. That's the real thing. You're trying hard. That's physical. That's mental. That's communal. You are engaging. You are trying. You are providing answers. You're trying on your rates. That person is always going to be called a motivated plebe. But in the military, we talk about somebody it becomes a joke after a while, like, you're motivated. And it's almost a negative statement once you actually get into the academic year. But like, the whole concept of academic motivation is that, like, you are trying really hard.
Yeah. The baseline is good, right? Like, the baseline is like, someone who's motivated is someone who's taking it seriously, someone who's going above and beyond and doing all these things. You'll hear a lot of times, like during the academic year, when there is a baseline level of pessimism and sarcasm that just exists in Naval Academy culture, right? Like, if someone goes and does something above and beyond, or like does something like that they didn't even need to do, like, you'll get a sarcastic, like, hey, motivate me, dude. Like, motivate me, shipmate. Like, okay, like, well, all right, yeah, motivate me, dude.
Shipmate.
Yeah, it's just, shipmate. So,
and that's not to say that people aren't encouraged to do well. It's not to say that people aren't encouraged to excel academically or anything along those lines. Like, there's a fine line between doing well and, like, that academic year motivate me. It's like, you are doing too much when somebody, you know, exclaims that in the academic year. That means that you're either building somebody out by doing that level of effort, building out. Yeah, that's a throwback. Pushing somebody down, or like, you're doing an unnecessary amount of work that's not the expectation, or you're making other people look bad by virtue of doing things that aren't necessary. So that's the key. You want to find that healthy balance.
One thing that I'll say, and I've appreciated it more as the years gone by, I would say I was pretty run-of-the-mill midshipman, but I probably was on the more laid-back side. I wouldn't call myself a dirtbag, but, you know, I was always on the kind of quieter side of mediocre, and, you know, I was never too locked on and never too lax. But, you know, I think a lot of the motivated people would drive me crazy for everything that you articulated. It makes others look bad. It's annoying, you know, blah, 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 blah. And I don't think I really had an appreciation for the Joes and the motivated people at the time when I was a midshipman. But I think through my company mates and classmates, people that I knew were more motivated and drove me crazy as a midshipman, I think some people are just high accountability, high energy people.
Yeah.
And so seeing some of those people, they get out of the Naval Academy and they get in the real world, and they translate that accountability and energy into their military career or their life. And I think I've had a new appreciation for some of the people like that. And I was, of many minutes in there, I was probably the most critical and harsh on that sort of attitude. But now that I look back on it, there were some really great people that were motivated mids. And I think some of it was just they have a high standard of life.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Grant, did they ever say, or Rick, you as well, did they ever say that everybody at the Naval Academy is a type A personality when they come in? That was something that they hit us on the head with that. But it is very true. Like, most of the time, the academy process, the admissions process, it's bringing in people who have excelled over the course of their lives, and your classmates are likely going to be phenomenal people. So you have to bridge that gap, as Rick said, of appreciating the Joes in your classroom, those folks who are highly motivated, but also have a high standard of performance academically, physically, those folks who are on the soups list, make sure you lean into them and figure out like, okay, are they doing too much or is this just who they are? Because those are the type of people that you want to surround yourself with, not just because they excel, but also because they make you better as a human being.
100%,
And
right? I think that's the
sometimes looking worse made me want to be better. And though I didn't like it at the time, it probably did some good for me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. 100%. And it's funny again when you're in the context of the Naval Academy, right? This is meant to be just like a peer insight into the midshipman experience, right? Like, we do. Like we tease people who are like extremely high performers and extremely like high strung and like really focused, really motivated, really into it, right? Like there's a level of sarcasm that goes into it. But like both these gentlemen have said, genuinely, normally, the people who you would consider like a Joe or highly motivated, there's an immense level of respect that goes to those people because like the level of consistency you have to have in like the core of who you are to show up every day that way. Like as you get separated from the academy, like there is an immense level of respect that goes to those people because like that's just how they're built and they do it and they have such a high level of discipline to continue it every day that like it grows, right? And it continues and they end up being extremely successful in whatever they do. And so yeah, it's just but it's a fun insight because the amount of times like you would go and be like, yo, hey, motivate me, dude. Hey, whoa, like look at this guy. Okay, yeah, no, all right, motivate me.
One of the words that we had on there, one of the most important rates in my mind, and everybody has their own one. It was man of the arena. You had that on the list, which is a quotation pulled from President Theodore Roosevelt, from his book Citizenship of a Republic. But it makes me think about that man in the arena. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena. And at the end of the day, like each and every one of us have to motivate me. Each of us has to recognize that like we can point fingers and call people out for being exceptional all day, but that's what you came to the academy for. And whether you hit it and you hit the ground running in Plebe Summer, or whether it takes third class year when you start your major classes, or maybe it takes you to get out into the fleet because you were the anchor man and it didn't really hit for you until you had the weight of being an officer on you. Recognize that like those things that you're learning at the academy, they all come full circle, whether you're in your life as a father, whether in your life as a husband, whether in your life as an officer, or you're getting out and you're in citizenship or government, as the mission says. So don't be surprised when those classmates that were Joes, when they're doing well, because there's a formula to this. So don't be surprised by
it. You feeling motivated, Rick? Did that get you going there a little bit?
It did get me going. And I only say that because I was very counter to that as a midshipman. And I definitely feel like, that was a really good point, that everybody comes to the Naval Academy at a different point. You've got some people that are bringing fleet experience. You have some people that did a few years of college or went to NAPS. Some people are just mature than others. Some people come from really big towns, really small towns. Yeah. Everybody's hitting it differently. And then you kind of get away from the Naval Academy and you see a lot more commonality than not. Right. And then you look back at those clashes and differences, and it really does genuinely be the thing. It's the thing that you end up laughing about and telling stories. For all the people that I cursed and under my breath muttered bad things because their room was cleaner than mine or they were up earlier than me, now we look back and those homecomings over a beer, you're laughing about that stuff, and it's one of the best things about the Naval Academy.
100%.
I love it.
With that, on the sentimental end, which I absolutely love. I think it's almost the perfect reflection. What you guys just said, like the ending of this episode, is a perfect reflection of that. Is as much as we joke about it, as much as we look back on it with humor and like a certain level of perspective, there's a certain level of seriousness, right? That that comes with it, and appreciation, and like a general like gratefulness for the whole experience, right? And everything that you take from the academy is going to help set you up for success, everything here, and all these crazy things and all these funny stories. Like when you make it out and you hit the fleet and you do these things, like you're saying, Troy, the weight of being an officer, the weight of generally being responsible for the care and leadership of the young men and women who have decided to enlist and serve the country, right? Like that, you feel it, right? And you get there and everything starts to come full circle. And so it's fun to reflect on it with jokes and lightheartedness, but everything that these gentlemen have stated is just like, it's the sentiment of it. In a moment's flip of the switch, you can like turn it on and be appreciative of it and see like the importance of it, right? And so it's an amazing thing. And so both you guys, like, this has been so fun doing this with you two. If you guys are down in the future, I'd love to continue this going. But for at least for right now,
anytime,
we finished a bunch of, part 3 of the Plebe Summer Terminology series, and we'll do our best to keep these going to keep you informed and educated and just get a little bit of insight into some of the terminology and uniqueness of the Naval Academy experience. So I hope you enjoyed listening. Troy, Rick, thank you both so much. And for everyone listening, I hope you have a great day.
Good luck, 28. Get after it.
There you go.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Academy Insider Podcast. I really hope you liked it, enjoyed it, and learned something during this time. If you did, please feel free to like and subscribe or leave a comment about the episode. We really appreciate to hear your feedback about everything and continue to make Academy Insider an amazing service that guides, serves, and supports midshipmen, future midshipmen, and their families. Thank you.